everybody! Welcome to the Dungeon Cooldown!
Hi!
It's
What's up?
Monday! Welcome to the week!
It's definitely Monday. I am feeling the Mondays right now. How about you guys in chat? Are you guys feeling the Mondays?
Speaking of chat, hello to our early birds. Eldritch Witch, first to the chat, happy Monday. Mom of Goblins, Passion Envisioned, Sir Darvin, Seapay Falcon, Sprinkwinkle, Extinguish the Flame. Hi, everybody. Oh, and we have a hype train incoming. Woo! Thank you so much. Woo! We have a sub from BaconBeard42 with their Prime, and Brandy LA. If you didn't know, you can sub to our channel for free through Amazon Prime, and it is much, much appreciated. So thank you for that.
I always forget to mention that. That's always such a great thing for people to do, because you already pay for Prime. I mean, you might as well use it, right?
Free sub.
CP Falcon, I didn't even know it was Monday. How did you not know? So we have a special guest today.
Bad news, bad Monday news.
Trish is here as our guest, and she played Keeley Qatar on our mini two-shot campaign by Jared Kajak. And we have subs from Grim Faded. Sorry to interrupt you, Jared, but we have 5 subs from Grim Faded. Thank you.
Thank you, Grim Faded. And thank you for the advantages last Wednesday, which is the only reason why anything that I had planned was effective.
So today we are going to be talking about the two-shot. I know Jared put in the Discord a call for questions, and we also have questions from the Patreon. If you didn't know, we have a Patreon, and I'm going to put the link in chat right now. That is how you can best support our show, but just showing up to our stream is super important to us too, and spreading the word. That's actually the most important way you can support the show, is just telling others so we can grow our community.
Yeah, the best community on the internet, as Jeff always says. How's everyone feeling? I want to know, Trisha, how are you feeling today?
Like after the last episode, or just today in general?
Both.
Today in general, I'm feeling okay. I traveled to Minnesota for a job over the weekend, so I'm still like getting back in the groove and getting a little bit of a later start today. But yeah, I'm trying to ramp back up into good work energy and get that ball rolling. And then as far as how I'm feeling after our last episode, I mean, okay. I'm a little perturbed on Kaylee's behalf that her talent show performance was so rudely interrupted by the Blue Devil.
Felt like a setup, to be honest.
No, stuff happens and you deal with it, and there's some real chaotic energy going on. So I hope that we're able to figure out what's up and set things right. We'll see.
Yeah, I had to sneak a duel in there somewhere, and when you said you were making a swashbuckler, I was like, perfect.
It all works into my master plan.
Yeah, actually, Jeff was telling me that, he was fully expecting everything to kind of go off the rails and I was going to get my comeuppance, but for the most part, and this is probably going to jinx me for this upcoming Wednesday, you guys more or less did what I was expecting you to do. I mean, I did kind of set it up to where it was like a talent show and then a big fight, so there's not a lot of options there, but I guess you could have just run off into the crowd and chased after Sir Andrew Aguecheek or
we could have been mean.
Yeah, sure, gone to a temple for no reason and started talking to the priest there.
Yeah, like somebody else we know.
Your feelings.
Maybe if Jeff was playing with us, he'd punish you by going off the rails.
I wanted him to play. I was like, bring it, Jeff. So
the Carson's wondering,
what was Jeff doing? Come on.
Yeah, Jeff.
It's not like he's selling his house or anything. Jeff's busy, but we will get him to play at some point. That will happen. Ron and I will make that happen if we have to tie him down and break a pinky or something.
Wow.
No, but it was really fun. I had a really good time. And like you said, like we kind of were all under the expectation of like, we are here for our talent show. And I think as players, we had prepared whatever our talent was going to be. So your chances of us running off and doing something wildly off path were pretty limited. in the first part of it, but watch out in part 2, Jared.
Yeah, and then you got this to work for as well.
Yeah. What is that from? Where'd you get that?
I bought it online. You know me and my fascination with gems.
Yeah. Kaylee had a backup plan for how to like maybe not rig, that's a strong word, but maybe, you know, make the tournament a little more in her favor, make the voting a little bit more in her favor. But like concerning that gem, but then the Blue Devil came in and messed it all up. So I was like, whatever, that's gone to crap.
Yeah, no, I saw that you were going for the lords and the ladies, and that's smart because they're the ones that get to vote, you know, yay or nay as far as whether or not you get passed on to the next level of the talent competition. But there's so much more going on than just a talent competition. That was just like I don't want to start you guys in a tavern. Let's find something that's a little bit more interesting. And I also knew that we were going to have a bunch of guests, you and 2/3 of the 3 Black Halflings. So I wanted to give everybody a shot at, you know, here's your moment. You get the stage. I'm going to shut up. Everyone else is going to shut up. It's just you. What do you want to do?
And Jasper and Unati killed it.
Yeah. Everyone did. That was such an incredible 2 hours of role play.
Yeah.
Just mind-blowing.
Yeah. Honestly, I think a lot of people love fights in Dungeons and Dragons, but I would say the highlight for sure of that episode for me was just your guys' RP and the talent show. Like, that's what really sold that whole episode for me anyways, and why I think it's worth, you know, watching or rewatching. So yeah. Good times.
I had fun making up my song. I was really excited to come up with the talent.
Your song was awesome. Everybody was so upset that you rolled a 1. They were so upset.
Well, today I'm going to write down the lyrics in French and in English on a piece of paper and write out the chords, and I'm going to publish it to the Patreon. Whoa! Whoa, we got to level 5 hype train. Thank you for the cheers, Adrian. Woo! Thank you so much. I'm going to publish that to the Patreon for our, Warden and Up subscribers on Patreon.
Yeah,
You get the cast secrets. So if you want to play that song, then I will publish it there and you can check it out.
Very cool.
What am I going to play, a bard? I don't know. I've only played a bard for a one-shot. I've never played a long-term bard.
You were actually going to play a bard in this,
yeah.
But then Jasper made his character first and sent it out to everybody, and he made a bard, obviously. So then...
And I didn't know that.
You didn't know that, and she made a bard, and I was like, okay, I know it's a talent show, but not everybody can play bards.
But
and then you switched it to warlock.
But you know what's so great about 5e, and we talk about this all the time, is that you don't have to be restricted to the class to do things like that. Yeah. You can really just homebrew whatever character that you want to play. So she just happens to be able to sing.
We have 2 rogues in the campaign right now, but I think our rogues are pretty different.
Very different. Very different. Yeah. Attaching the swashbuckler to a rogue completely changes the class. And Layla, Miss Mittens, is obviously like a classic cat burglar thief. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you couldn't get much more different than that.
Oh, Brava says Jasper's changeling performance was my favorite part of the whole episode. Incorporating costume changes like that was just genius. Agreed.
It was so fun.
Yeah, leave it to the Brits to do murder mystery on a D&D stream.
Yeah, so much homework went into that. Both of them. And Unati had like 3 different parts to her her fight choreography as well. Yeah. As did Trish. You had this whole... Did you make that up on the spot, or was that premeditated?
It was a little premeditated and a little made up, because I wanted to allow wiggle room to see what would happen, because obviously if I failed a roll, that might impact how the next part of it went. And it's hard if you're doing something as a bard, right? At least from the RP perspective, you can control that. If you're doing something that's role dependent, you gotta leave it a little fluid, because the dice may not be in your favor, and then you're gonna have to adjust on the fly. So I kind of had this is the basic outline of how I'd like it to go, with room to adjust if needed.
Yeah, that's experienced Dungeons and Dragons player talking right here.
Well, the only thing that, like I said, I didn't get to do that I was planning on, because Kaylee has a thing, like one of her personality traits is that she will pretty much do anything to secure the win, whether it's in combat or competition. And so my kind of like backup clutch play, because everyone else's talents are amazing. And I was like, straight up on talent competition alone, I don't think Kaylee's got this. So my backup play was to like sleight of hand in a play to Lady Marguerite.
Ooh.
That I thought would secure Lady Marguerite's vote.
Sure.
And then if I had that vote, Lady Marguerite seeming the most influential of the lords and ladies, at least at that time, maybe not so given what we know now, but at least, you know, early on, that was the play, that if I could kind of like finagle that vote, that might be the backup plan. Because all Kaylee cares about is having her, you know, her name in that picture frame on that wall. She just wants everyone to know that she won. She like, Kaylee's like, Diamond, take it, leave it, or Sapphire, take it, leave it. I just want to be known as like the winner.
Your suave energy, your casual drinking of like 17 wine glasses, that was such great character development. I knew who you were right away.
Awesome.
Oh, and we are getting shout outs for Katie balancing a cup for 15 minutes on stream as well.
She did.
Thank you for the cheer, Hadrian. We really appreciate your support.
And with Katie.
Yeah, Katie's performance was amazing too. We're like totally glossing over the fact that I almost died of laughter for Katie's performance with Jake too.
It was so funny.
Well, she went first. Kind of. She went first.
And
second.
after she went, I was like, Jared, why did you do that to us? Why did you make her go first? She's so good.
I honestly thought she was gonna bomb. She said she was gonna do magic card tricks, and I was like, do you know magic card tricks? And she's like, no. She was gonna do something silly with cards, and then the audience was just gonna, you know, lace into her, just like they had laced into Sir Andrew Aguichek. And man, her and Jake, it's all about timing.
We did have the assist from Jake, which was total clutch. But also, like, in thinking of what are everyone else's talents going to be, nowhere in my mind did I think someone's going to do a comedic act. So I was very happy with that. Was amazing.
Yeah, great balance.
That's true. That's very true. And then Jessica, yours got nice and dark and creepy.
Yeah.
Your song.
Yeah. And we got a lot of compliments on how you handled that natural one too, Jared.
Yeah, I mean, there was no arguing that your performance was great. I mean, that was given, and everybody was enthralled, and obviously, you know, the viewers loved it. So I was like, okay, so what could happen if you roll in a 1? Why would people still not engage or enjoy this, or why would you not get a thunderous applause at the end with your natural 1? And I was like, well, there is one person out there that wants to make sure that things are going to be hard for you, and that one person saw you doing well and was like, no, I'm going to put my thumb on you for a little bit and hold you down, and that way Warlock you have to continue
patrons,
working.
Man, they just can't let it rest.
No way.
Yeah.
Ugh.
No, that was a beautiful handling of that, Jared. And I think we were talking about it a little bit after the adventure. I could be wrong, but I feel like we had a conversation about how, like, when the rolls don't go in your favor is almost when you get the better storytelling.
Oh yeah.
Because you have to, I mean, everyone has to come up with something other than what they had planned. And sometimes those like impromptu moments are just gold.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the natural 1s are just as interesting storytelling as natural 20s are, in my opinion, if not more so.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right, shall we jump into some of these questions?
Yeah.
I feel like we might have already answered a couple of them on accident. From our Patreons, Jay Shipper, Jared, what led you to place this adventure in a French-inflected setting? Was it simply a desire to use and hear French accents? Maybe. Or were there other reasons for this choice? Okay, so I knew that our special guests were going to be 2 actual Brits. So I immediately thought, I do not want to set this in a traditional fantasy setting. I want this to have some kind of zhuzh to it. And I actually started to create a two-shot that was going to be set in a post-apocalyptic fantasy world, which is kind of my baby, that I already created, and I was going to merge that into D&D 5th edition, and I realized the mountain of work it was going to take to convert my system into 5th edition. So I scrapped that idea, and then I was like, well, where else could I set it? And I was like, well, we haven't done anything French in Jess game. No French accents, no French area. There's like a pseudo-Italian area, but no France. And then I was like, well, what's French that's interesting? And then I immediately thought French Renaissance. I immediately thought Three Musketeers, Cyrano de Bergerac, all the things that inspire Civ that I don't necessarily get to play with as much as I would like in Civ's world. Because Civ wants to be the dream book fantasy version of a swashbuckler. He wants to be the Three Musketeers. He wants to be that hero, but he lives in a world where that's not easy. And his upbringing and his past make it to where that's not something he gets to enjoy for long. So I said, well, what if there is a world where that is the case? There are swashbucklers. There are Three Musketeers. There is a hierarchy, but there's also, les liaisons dangereuses. There's like a reputation situation there as well. And that got my juices flowing to the point where I was like, well, forget the post-apocalyptic fantasy thing. I want to do this. And then I mentioned it to the cast, and Jess squealed, and I was like, okay, there's a positive note to it.
Oh, yeah. Jess, did you squeal because you were like, oh man, the French skills, I got this?
Well, I am such a Francophile. I always have been. That's why I went and studied in France, because I just love how romantic everything is, and I love the language. And although my accent is so bad now with French that I would be so embarrassed if anybody who's actually French watched it. I mean, Quebecois, sure, I'm not as embarrassed because that might be a little closer to what I was doing, but yeah, speaking French is I do like to do it, but I'm so rusty.
Can I tell you, Jess, I studied French all 4 years of high school and a semester in college, and to this day, like, I went to France with my mom and sister last year for 4 days. I didn't understand anything anybody said. I couldn't speak any of it. And what I came to realize is my French teacher, all through high school, spoke French with an incredible American accent.
Yes, that is exactly what happened to me. I went to France after like 6 years of studying it, and I was like, oh my God, I have no idea. Like, I was like fresh off of French training, and I had no idea what anybody was saying. Like, to the point where I was like anxious, like I couldn't speak because I was like, what is happening? Why can't? Dude, I want
to run a Google Translate like this the whole time. Because I was like, I thought I'd be at least basic conversational. And it was like signs I could read, no problem. But everyone that spoke to me, I almost wanted to say, like, could you write that down? So, like, reading and writing French, I had very little problems. But speaking and listening comprehension were just in the toilet. So I commend you, Jess. I was like super impressed.
Well,
sounded good to me.
What's kind of crazy about that is I had the same experience, but then by the end of the few months that I was there, it flipped completely, where I could understand better than I could read and write because I got used to that. So if you ever get the chance to go back and, randomly live in France with your family, there you go. It could happen.
It could happen.
Sign me up. My only exposure to French is watching Monty Python. That would be my exposure to French.
Witchbase says next one shot, all Welsh and Gaelic, please.
Oh, sure. Although the Welsh accent, man, that is.
What's the Welsh
hard.
accent sound like?
It's got a lilt. It's all about the lilt. If you can get the lilt, then the rest kind of falls into place. But it's a very sing-songy accent. I'm not going to try to do it right now.
Is there a Welsh celebrity who we could?
I'm sure Chat probably knows at least.
Chat, who's a Welsh? What celebrity has a Welsh accent that I could recognize? Irish. Well, we could. I think if we go to Axbright, unless Conroy and Fahima are their own kind of like unit, and they have their kind of like Irish, pseudo-Irish accent, and then the rest of the town is not. Anthony Hopkins? Does he sound Welsh though?
No, he's been trained to lose his accent.
Yeah, he sounds quite proper.
There's a bunch of Welsh actors, but a lot of them go to London to train, and they have the accent beat out of them and end up having more of like a standard British sounding accent. Not that they can't go back to Welsh, but yeah, it's something that they usually get trained out of.
Did that happen to either of you in your actor training? Like, did you have a dialect from your hometown that had to get beat out of you?
Michigan.
Porch. Forget it. Yeah, I had a rural Washington, Eastern Washington hick dialect.
Isn't it so funny too when you go home and you're like, I could still sound like this if I had not learned how to like. What is it? I guess like normalize your voice. What is the word where they
standard American dialect?
Yeah. Standardize your your the way you speak. Yeah.
That's all I ever heard in school because I was from Philadelphia, which is like what Meredith Town was going for but didn't quite nail. But it's very specific. It's like Philadelphia is like kind of southern Jersey once removed. It's super specific.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, like when I went to school, like freshman year, I went to school for theater. Freshman year, first semester, they were like, cool, unless you all only want to play characters from Philly or Southern Jersey, you're gonna learn standard American dialect really fast. And just 2 weeks ago, I was home visiting my entire extended family and had that exact same moment, Jessica, where I was like, I could sound like this all the time, but then let me tell you what, in about 5 days, I sounded exactly like them.
Yeah.
Like 5 days of being home,
That's all it took.
I completely reverted. And now that I'm back here, I feel like it's, you know, I'm back in the normal groove. But even flying back to LA from Philly, I was in the airport trying to like figure out what was going on with our delayed flight and stuff. And a woman in line that was also flying back to LA was like, oh, are you from here? And I said, originally, yeah, but I live in LA now. And she was like, because I can hear your Philadelphia accent.
Wow.
And I was like, oh no. How long
It's
is it gonna take me to
happened.
lose it again? Luckily, it was only like 24 hours. I was good.
It's like a cold.
It's very funny though. Yeah, it's very funny.
Okay, next question. If your kids were D&D characters, what would their race/class be? Jessica, Kit, your kids?
My
What race and
fur
class?
children.
Yes.
Pebbles would be, well, we'll just say she's a tabaxi. Who's a sloth? What's a sloth class? She's such a fat fatty. Which class loves to eat?
I feel like
Maybe a bard. She's pretty loud.
Barbarian. Sure.
Yeah, Pebbles is a tabaxi bard. I mean,
I also feel like sorcerers are kind of lazy because they just kind of innately have their magical powers. They don't actually have to work at it.
Mm-hmm. I could see that. Yeah, and Ollie.
Sorcerers get non-diggity.
What's that?
Ollie's like.
I was saying sorcerers are the best. I love sorcerers. They're amazing.
What
Not
class
many
is like
people
this?
play sorcerers.
It's like one of my go-to classes.
Sorcerer? Oh, I love sorcerers.
Really?
Yeah, you get all the magic, but you don't have to worry about spells, like spell memorization and stuff like that. It's great.
And meta magic is awesome.
Yeah, meta magic is fun. I will agree with you there. That is definitely what makes that class interesting.
Bard,
And like the
school of
person said,
chunking.
sorcerer points are a really cool function. They totally are. I'd much rather have to worry about that than what spells I mememorized or didn't memorize the night before.
Twinning
Sure.
spells, so good.
Yeah. Quicken.
Yeah, quicken.
And extend spell. That can be a lot of fun, especially at later levels. Okay. Trisha, what about your
What about your real
child?
children?
race/class?
Well, my Logan, since we both have Logans, my
Sure.
Logan would probably be, I mean, honestly, either a mage or a bard at this stage. And the reason that I say those two, well, I would say bard because he's way into guitars and like music. Like for his 3rd birthday, all he wanted was a violin. And the kid owns like 5 guitars.
Aww.
and he's very creative in making up stories. So all of that to me like points to Bard. However, he also is very analytical. He's not one of those kids that just like rushes in to see what happens. He's the kid that like really prepares before he gets into any unknown territory and thinks about every aspect of everything. And you know, when he has to overcome obstacles right now, he totally does it with Spider-Man-esque spider webs. So he'll walk into a situation, like if he sees a bad guy on TV right now, he'll either use his thunder power, which is him pointing at the screen and going, or he will flip, he'll thwip webs, he'll go, so he's like legit solving things by casting spells right now in our house with his imagination.
So
he calls himself a super magin, which is a superhero that uses their imagination.
Wow.
That
maybe he
needs
invented
to be
his own
something.
D&D class, the super magin.
You have to write a children's book. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's like very, very wild imagination right now. So yeah, it's super magin could be a class. That's what he does.
Wow, we
Cool.
just got some gift subs from Morgan Peter Brown.
Morgan!
Celebrity producer and actor Morgan Peter Brown is on our stream gifting subs. Thank you so much, MPB. How generous.
How's Mississippi? How's Mississippi? How's Mississippi?
And
That's not Mississippi.
what about your Logan?
My Logan currently is a Triton barbarian. He loves the water. He's obsessed with the water. Every day it's pool. I don't know why he puts an A at the end of pool, but he does. Pool.
Poulet.
Yeah.
That's French for chicken.
Yeah. Is it?
Poulet.
Maybe he just wants some chicken. Actually, he hates chicken because we feed it to him all the time. And the reason why I say barbarian is because lately he does this thing where if he's really upset, he'll grab his hands and go and just like seize up. And I'm like, whoa, dude, chill. We taught him chill. So now when we say chill, he'll go, chill.
So cute.
Yeah.
Chill.
Yeah.
Chill.
We pat his head, so he does it to himself to chill himself down.
That's adorable.
Really cute.
Yeah. So yeah, Triton Barbarian for sure.
Cool.
For shizzle. All right, next question. With both of you being in new seats, Jared as DM and not a player, and Trisha as the player and not interviewer, what things are you finding out, good and bad, in these new positions? Does it change your perspective or give you more appreciation of what the others / Jeff go through in normal sessions? This is from Dr. Sparks. Trisha, you want to jump on that first?
Sure. I mean, I always have an appreciation for what you guys do. I think that your play style is very pass the ball, if you will, which you don't often find in home D&D games. But for me, I mean, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons as a player since I was 15 or 16 years old. So I have a lot of experience kind of around the table, not necessarily as DM, but around the table as a player. So I feel like even during the dungeon rundown, I always had so much respect and appreciation for what you guys did. So I don't know if it gives me like a new appreciation, but it definitely is a new experience to be able to play with such talented performance players. Like it's really cool. And after watching you guys perform in this way for so long, it's like I'm fangirling a little bit. So it's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have a question in chat. Are you going to DM one day?
Ooh.
Have you
This
ever?
is always my funny question. So I have had the extraordinary pleasure of being a player for very, very talented DMs. So I have this kind of complex where I like the bar is so high
Yeah.
that it terrifies me to DM, and like always has. Because I had the same DM when I first started playing for almost 5 years. And throughout like my time at Geek and Sundry and stuff like that, like I've just gotten to work with some extraordinarily talented people. And when I play home games, I find myself thinking like, I could totally do this. Like, I'm almost, I have to like curb myself because I'm almost hypercritical of games when I play because I'm so used to specific things. But also DMing for camera and DMing for off camera like are very different things. I'm sure Jared can weigh in on this tremendously because I know you said it's the first time you DM'd like on stream. But you know, the pressure to really perform and, you know, nail each specific characterization every single time as you're swapping back and forth and roll with the punches, but still make sure that you're remembering all the different intricacies of the rules, etc. Like that, I overthink it, I think, is the long answer to that question. So I don't know that DMing on camera would be anytime in my near future. I think maybe if I was DMing with like a trusted group of personal friends where I'm like, yo, I'm gonna mess up a lot, and that would be okay. I think once I like got my feet wet in that environment, I might be more willing to give it a try on camera. But yeah, my bar is too high. I've seen too much talent, including yourself, Jared.
Well, you know, my friend Alex, who I co-host Hello Goodberry with, she had never DM'd before. I don't even know if she'd ever DM'd off camera. She DM'd for her first time for a live stream that we did recently. Just outstanding. So good. And that experience made me believe if you are a good storyteller, if you like to tell stories and you're a good improviser, you're very giving, kind of what you were saying, the pass the ball style of gameplay, I think you can't screw it up. I think you're just going to be good. I think it's just in your blood. Or in your brain. In your brain,
I think,
paints.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think there's a raw talent aspect, but there's also a skill there. And the more you do it, that's what I always tell people when you first run a game. It's probably going to be bad, or it's going to be clunky, or you're going to make mistakes. It's just going to happen. But the more you do it, and that's why it's nice, and I agree with you 100%, Trisha, to have a group of friends that are willing to, you know, hang in there with you and help you and understand, oh, yeah, you're right. I forgot that guy was invisible or something like that. You know, like little things. Having a forgiving audience and a forgiving group of players can really let a dungeon master bloom or blossom.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one tricky thing
also the first time want to try it with a pre-written adventure.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to like have some kind of rails to navigate back to if you get too far off, you know, just to have that security net, if you will.
Yeah.
No, I agree 100% on that. And even if you're a player and you've been a player for a long time and you're a very experienced player, switching your brain over to being a dungeon master, it's like the difference between acting and directing. Like you can over direct, just like you can overact. So there's pitfalls in both areas, but they're completely different, you know? And it uses two totally different sides of the brain, in my opinion.
Yeah. I actually found in college, while I didn't enjoy directing as much, I think like I was better at directing than I ever was at acting, which was such a funny thing to find
Are you analytical? Are you an analytical?
I'm super analytical.
Maybe like big picture.
You know, everything to me is like a math problem, which is part of my issue when I'm being critical of my own performance on streamed D&D shows. Part of my own issue is that I feel like I overthink and tend to metagame too much instead of just living in the moment. So I try really hard to pull myself back and think like, okay, don't think, hey, which spells can I put together that are going to absolutely maximize for this situation? Don't try to overthink, you know, okay, if any of these 10 things happen, here's my next move, and like chess it. Just live in the moment and play it. And that's been something that's been a real adjustment for me going from off-screen playing to on-screen playing.
Sure.
We have a good question in chat that relates to this. Dasnier's wondering, who is the DM that is on your bucket list to play a game with?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd love, I know B. Dave Walters is running a horror game right now. I would love to.
Black Dice Society.
Yeah, I would love to do specifically horror with B. Dave running it.
B. Dave is amazing as a DM in any setting, but yes, he excels at horror. And if you like good horror roleplay, I would also recommend Ivan Van Norman.
Sure.
He's an amazing dark horror DM as well.
I thought about going horror with this 2-shot, and then I was like, I already feel like the main campaign gets a little too serious sometimes. I was like, I want to keep it a little lighthearted, at least at first. And then if it, if something else happens, then so be it.
I love dark horror roleplay, which is like so weird because I feel like I'm normally such a like peppy, upbeat person, but like
maybe that's why it's your alter ego. That's your fantasy.
It's so interesting. I think it like that actor need to experience something very different than your own life.
Yeah.
And live through that, but in a safe way. To me, it's very fascinating. It's very satisfying. But also that's tricky to DM as well, because then you want to make sure that you know what everybody's safe zones are, what everybody's triggers are. Because if you're really going to go there, like I've been in campaigns before where it's like, look, we're going to go there. Like what can I not touch with you?
Yeah.
And you have to know yourself as a player, and you have to know yourself as a DM if you're going to do it, but it can be really cool.
Yeah.
I really want to play in a dark horror game as well. I did Curse of Strahd very briefly, a couple of weeks of it when I played at Meltdown Comics. When we talked about this when we did our other one shot, when Satine was doing those Meltdown Dungeons and Dragons meetups. Did you ever do those, Trish?
Which ones?
Satine would run in Los Angeles just like open meetup group for Dungeons and Dragons players at Meltdown Comics in Hollywood.
That's cool.
That's how we met.
I haven't had the opportunity to do that.
I don't think it's still happening because I think that it ended before the pandemic.
Cool.
For me, I'm gonna go out on a limb with my DM bucket list, and I don't know why this popped in my head, but I think Allison Brie would be super fun as a DM. Right?
Okay.
She's not a DM as far as I know, but how much fun would that be?
I mean,
that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that makes me immediately think of Deborah Ann Wool as well. Yeah. She has a very unique style of DMing that I like. It's not the stereotypical sword and board kick down the door style of DMing, which I love. There's a lot more nuance to what she does.
I think there's so many celebrities who would be so good at improvising and playing Dungeons and Dragons who just like don't know, who haven't touched that world yet.
Sure. Yeah, they just haven't, learned the rules, essentially. The basics. Yeah.
What about you, Jared?
For guest.
For your bucket list DM.
You said B Dave.
You said B Dave. Sorry, you answered first.
I didn't think it was a bucket list though. I mean, I feel like B Dave could actually happen if we're just talking in like
this is bucket list.
dreamland.
Well, I mean, you guys work on the internet, so
that's resurrecting Edgar Allan Poe and having him run a 1890s horror game.
Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I have. I mean, there are still lots of talented DMs out there that I have not had a chance to work with, like Satine's a great example. But for the most part, a lot of the people that I'd be like, I've been lucky enough to get to play at their table. Like Jason Carl for Vampire the Masquerade. There's so many people that like I have had the opportunity to play at least just a little bit with those people that I'm
Trisha is spoiled.
I'm spoiled. Again, this is why I'm terrified to DM. Because I'm so spoiled as a player. But hey, you know who I'll say? Jeff Kanata.
There you go.
I have not played a game that Jeff has ran yet, so there you go.
Wow. Okay, well, you know it's going to happen. As long as the dungeon run keeps going forever, it's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Knock on wood.
All right. Next question, Aaron McLeod. A couple of questions. With creating a story of your own, how do you decide to pace the events and progression of the story so that the players have enough time to explore and define themselves while also ensuring the game goes smoothly? this guy's got to be a dungeon master. Is this mostly down to feel as you get into the game itself? Question 2, when you start a new campaign, whether as a player or as a DM, how do you establish it to have the party want to adventure together? Is this something you figure out in your session 0? Yes. Or you're planning? No, because if you just plan it, they won't do it. It has to be a session 0. Which is why I think session 0s are not optional. Unless you're doing a one-shot and you just want to throw people together and have chaos happen for no reason. If you really want them to coalesce quickly, do a session 0. It will make your life so much easier as a dungeon master.
It was very helpful to do a session 0 before the 2-shot.
Yeah. Or do you all try to nudge things in the direction as you play? I mean, as a dungeon master, you obviously want to like guide your players in a direction, but I also think there's a pitfall that a lot of dungeon masters, especially early on, make, which is the impassable forest is on this side and the impassable wall is on this side, and in front of you is what I want you to do, and you don't have a choice. That's a classic dungeon master mistake. I think
you're very passionate about this topic.
Yeah,
because I think
you need to give options.
there is a spectrum, I think, of this school of thought. Because other DMs are like, you know, do whatever, do anything.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. I say it's a mistake to do that. It's good to be, as a dungeon master, it's good to be open to what your players are going to give you and to try to work with that as much as possible, within reason. Like, obviously, if your player characters all at the same time decide to go in different directions and not work together, then that breaks the game, because then you're running a bunch of one-shots for individuals instead of running a cohesive group game. Plus, you don't get all the juicy RP or combat maneuvers or whatever that get done as a group that coalesces and works together. Because one of the cool things about 5th edition, now that it's growing, and the classes are growing and the subclasses are growing and the races are growing and the options are growing, is that there's infinite combinations of class, race, player, dungeon master, setting. So whatever you end up with, that's your painting, that's your collage, and it's unique to you. So I always think it's a mistake to force your players into something.
Sure. Yeah. We
But you can bait them, you can bait them, you can trap them, you can lure them, you can coerce them.
I like to be lured.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll take the bait. I see you. I'll go.
For sure.
What's down there?
For sure.
Looks dark and scary. Let's go.
Yeah. Jessica is not a hard player to bait. It's just not.
Yeah, I'm like, ooh, shiny? Okay.
Yeah.
Dangerous? Don't see that. Let's go. Ashen Mage's lair through a portal? What could go wrong?
Exactly.
Honey, what is this? Honey of a DR fan. Wow, lovely name. How come you don't share, or would you share a session 0? We would, but I think we don't make it a habit, because session 0 is everybody's getting to know each other, and it's kind of sloppy. So especially for our show, for the dungeon run, we do like, our show is produced, we like to bring to you a very intentional show. So session 0 would be fun, but that would definitely be, if we do a session 0 release in the future, it would be a bonus Patreon content, most likely.
Yeah, I think we would just tape it and then release the pre-taped session 0. That way we can all still connect with one another and connect with, if there's guests, connect with whoever those guests are, and there's no pressure of the show,
Yeah, additionally, great point, STS2884. Some things need to be kept off camera, makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if you go into a session 0 knowing it's going to be recorded and possibly released publicly, I think that really changes the atmosphere of the gameplay, because you don't want to make mistakes. You're a little more on edge. But if session 0 is just like, whatever, guys, let's be silly, let's get to know each other, that's a whole different mood. And I think that's what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. It's like rehearsal.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may also try out different things with your character that you're like, I'm not sure this is the direction I want to go with this character, but let me see how it plays. And you know what I mean? Like, if you know it's being recorded, you might think, oh, this might make the character really inconsistent if I kind of veer off here versus I'm just trying.
Totally.
Here's a good question for Trisha from A Jar Full of Bees. What do you think of playing a swashbuckler? What other classes and subclasses are your favorite to play in your other games?
Oh man. Swashbuckler is fun so far. I'm still kind of learning the different ways that combat works. Like as far as when you can sneak attack and when you can't and stuff like that, which Jared, thank you so much for helping me out with, because I thought you needed to have advantage on the roll to pull off a sneak attack, but you said with Swashbuckler specifically, that's not the case.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about Swashbuckler is that you can get sneak attacks so long as there isn't someone that is either an enemy or an ally of yours within 5 feet of you.
Okay.
And if they're, even if it's an ally, if that ally is within 5 feet of the monster, then you still, or the enemy, you still get your sneak attack, because that's going back to classic rogue sneak attack.
Right. I was going to say that's when I was familiar with, you get the sneak attack if there's an ally within 5 feet of the enemy, because then they're flanked and you would have advantage.
Yeah. The reason why swashbucklers are more or less like rogues that can frontline fight a little bit is because if no one's within 5 feet of you, then you get your sneak attack. So you're hitting hard every round if you hit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. So, I mean, I'm definitely still learning this subclass. A lot of times I play sorcerers, again, like kind of like I was mentioning earlier, because I love being a spellcaster, but I don't necessarily want to have to worry about whether or not I memorized a spell the night before. And I love the idea of wild magic. I don't always go wild with my sorcerers. It depends what kind of character I'm creating, but sometimes it's very funny. Like I like characters that have an extreme juxtaposition of some sort. So like if I'm going like a really lawful character and then give them wild magic or something like that. So like it's something they have to constantly work against. Or I'll do like a character that's very diminutive in size, but it's a barbarian with a very high strength stat. Or something like that. Yeah. So it's just, you know, finding ways to tell that story that's not necessarily what you would expect.
The juxtaposition.
What was your first D&D character, Trish? Because that dichotomy that you're describing really feels like you've played a lot of D&D and you're like, ooh, so how can we like make this interesting, like finesse, like what are the different parts of my personality I can explore? But your first D&D character, I feel like typically we go for what's familiar to us because we're like, oh my god, so much information. Okay, what kind of fantasy novels do I like? What kind of characters do I connect to? Let's go for this.
Well, and at least my very first time, my DM was like, don't worry about spellcasting for right now. That's a whole section of the book that you haven't read yet. So I was like, cool. So my very first character ever was a rogue, and this was in 2nd edition AD&D. So you were not worried about subclasses, like level 1 rogue, pretty straightforward, pretty squishy, but in my very first adventure, the character died. So I didn't play
in the first session
for very long. But this is also why, like, if you ever hear me like, come on, if you get the TPK, that's what happens. Them's life. I'm much less of a, not that I don't like people who DM rule of cool. Like, that's great. You run your table however you want to run your table. But I'm someone that kind of came up in a very like, sometimes the rolls don't go your way or you make dumb decisions and there's consequences for that. Like, I'm sorry, that's how the game goes. So I always play a little defensively. Knowing that like that first rogue, all I was doing was trying to like Aladdin style hop across rooftops running away from some bandits. And I didn't get the dex roll, missed the jump, and fell 10 feet. And I was squishy enough as a level 1 rogue that the falling damage killed me.
No, come on, that's on your DM. Come on.
No, but see, because that's kind of the way I started, and that's the way I played with that DM for like 4 to 5 years. I was like, look, as a level 1 rogue, that was a dumb chance for me to take at that point. I was trying to like do something cool and tell a cool story, and I was only level 1.
But it was your first time playing, right?
It was my
You
first
don't
time
know.
playing, so I didn't know. I was like, D&D, live your dreams.
You're like, it's a video
Like,
game, right? I can just like parkour my way
Right.
across buildings.
Then I learned not to take chances like that if you're not confident that your stats can support it. Like, so again, like this is why I say, like, as a player, I'm a lot in my head too much for what current modern on-camera D&D is. Because
Well,
modern
that's
on-camera
also-
D&D is like,
Yeah.
forget about the rules, just tell an improv story. Just be
Yeah,
present.
that's
in the
also
moment,
the difference
play your
between
character.
yeah,
Say
between
that
second
again?
and fifth. It's the difference between second edition and fifth edition too.
It is. Like, I mean, in my head for second edition, I was always calculating THACO and like, I was like very up here for everything. Combat. And not to say that we didn't have like intense roleplay moments, because we still did. But yes, it was much more of like a game of the mind from a math perspective than like a theater of the mind rule of cool, which you see a lot in fifth edition now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that as a player I'm always kind of struggling with. But yeah, my first character is a rogue who died in my first session, and then after that, I think after that I created a mage. After that,
Ooh,
Yeah.
you were like, I'm ready.
I read more of. I was like, session 1, I'm hooked. Give me the monster's guide. Give me the monster manual. Give me the player's handbook, and then like blasted through all the books. And was like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to do a spellcaster. And played a mage, and that mage survived to level 9. So that was
Yeah,
that character.
Wow.
amazing.
Because I learned my lesson and I didn't take stupid chances.
Well, we are at about 2 minutes to 1 Pacific time right now. Thank you so much to everybody who's using your channel points to highlight your messages. Please use those, the clamshells. If you watch our show, you can kind of rack up those points and highlight your messages and do other fun things. But I think we only have time for one more question. Was there anything else from the Discord or the Patreon?
Patreon, Changebox. Trisha, what do you miss the most about doing the rundown? Jared, how much practice have you had? You did fabulously. Well, thank you, Changebox. I've done a lot of DMing, but like we said, it was the first time I've ever DM'd on a stream. But Trisha, what do you miss most about doing the rundown?
I mean, chatting D&D with you guys on a regular basis. I mean, I got to see your lovely faces and catch up with you about life stuff and what was going on in your careers from an acting standpoint. Like, seeing everybody week to week was awesome. And also just having a weekly outlet to chat D&D. Like, I go through sometimes in my life where I am playing a weekly game or sometimes multiple weekly games. And then I go through like a 6-month period where I'm not playing at all. And being able to host the Dungeon Rundown like gave me an outlet to nerd out about that stuff with other people who are passionate about it. So it was really lovely.
Totally. Yeah. I remember when I first met you, I was, I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical, and I was like, I don't know. Does she know much about Dungeons and Dragons? Like, is she gonna, and I will never forget this.
Does she know?
Both Alex and Jeff at the same time said, "Oh, she knows." Like, oh, okay. So she's a nerd, and she was like, and they were like, "Oh, she probably knows more than what we know." And now knowing you and knowing Jeff and knowing Alex, I can be like, "Yeah, I could see why they would say that."
That's very sweet of them. Alex, Jeff, I've known for a long time before the Dungeon Run started. And Alex and I had a lot of mutual friends, but hadn't really crossed paths at this point. But when Alex kind of put a call out, like, hey, we need a host that knows D&D, I think several people reached out to him. And we're like, have you talked to Trisha Hershberger? Like, she does hosting professionally and also plays a crap ton of D&D. So when I met Alex, I mean, my interview was essentially Alex and I nerding out about D&D for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Wow.
And great.
Yeah.
Best interview ever.
Yeah,
it was really fun. I was like, how many other people are you seeing for this role? And he was like, I mean, honestly, after the last hour and a half conversation we just had, like, come on. And I'm like, okay, cool.
That's one cool thing about Alex, is that he just goes with his gut, you know? That's what he did with all of us, anyways.
So grateful.
Yeah, and you guys are all awesome, so kudos.
Yee.
One last question from Hadrian X. Why are main gouges the coolest? Seriously, I've been weirdly obsessed since 2nd edition Arms and Equipment Guide.
Why are what the coolest?
Main gouge. So when she was dueling with the Blue Devil, aka Hotspur, I did something that was kind of sneaky. I gave him a magical item. Not really magical. It's an actual thing called a main gouge, which is this big cross-hilt dagger meant for parrying. But I specifically chose to do a swordbreaker style main gouge, and I'm only into this because I was into fencing and stage combat for a while. That was sort of my bread and butter back in the day when I was doing theater. And what a swordbreaker is that it's a dagger that's got a serrated edge with grooves in it that are at an angle, perfectly designed to catch a rapier blade and twist it. And if you twist it just right, you can snap the blade, and that's what it's designed to do, and it's called a swordbreaker. They're very cool. I highly recommend anybody that's a D&D nerd or just a nerd in general Googling them. There's a bunch of different styles. There's even cool ones that like have blades that snap out on either side so that you can use it almost like a fork and catch the blade and parry it to one side. But that's what the Blue Devil was doing, was he was baiting I'm spacing on your character's name. Kaylee, thank you. I was gonna say Layla and I knew that wasn't right. He was baiting Kaylee to attack because that's what he had planned all along, is he wanted to humiliate her. He wanted to catch her blade and snap it so that she would look the fool. Because that's, in this world, the reputation is what matters. Like, even if he lost the duel, even if she pulled her sword back and stuck it into his shoulder, he would have still proved a point that he was this master swordsman. And that was his goal all along, is that he had that up his sleeve, and that's what he... And I was fully expecting you to beat me on initiative, stab him once in the shoulder, and have that be the end of the duel, and it was going to be very anticlimactic.
Went way differently than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
but
that's
not over.
What happened.
It isn't over. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't even know what's going to happen in the next episode. I'm excited.
Yeah.
And now, 2 days.
And now Trisha has free reign to do all kinds of dirty, underhanded fighting if she wants, because he broke the rules.
Bring him out.
He broke the rules, so
yeah.
He has no honor now. I can do what I want.
That's true. It's very true.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us for the Dungeon Cooldown. Thank you, Trish, for taking time out of your Monday to join us on the Dungeon Cooldown. It's always such a pleasure to chat D&D and chat Dungeon Run. We will be back on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for more Dungeons and Dragons, and to finish up our what is it in French? Le fête des
Fête.
The fête du Sapphire Lumière.
Fête des Lumières du Sapphire.
In my song, I wrote it and I did festival, because that's like another fête is like party, festival. Sure. And I was like, is that going to be contradictory if I say festival and not fête? Because it was.
No, actually, like if you type, the weird thing about like Google Translate is if you type in party or if you type in festival, depending on where it is in Sapphire Lights Festival or the Festival of Sapphire Lights, it changes whether it's fête or festival. It's weird.
I'm sure they're different. I'm sure there's like a subtle context difference, but festival felt better in the song. Yeah.
Well, the song was amazing.
Well, we will send a raid over to Xanderific. He's playing Death Stranding. We love Xander, and this is a post-apocalyptic open-world action and exploration game, so please give him some love from the Dungeon Run community, a dungeon raid, and we will see you on Wednesday. Humankind, be both.
Be both.
Bye, everyone.